21 county prosecutors who are with us. Hats off to each and every one of you, not just for the reason we're gathering today, but more generally to all members of law enforcement. I know we've got a bunch of elected officials here today. It's an incredible honor to be with you for a few minutes. My team is really good, and with my input, as usual, they came up with some prepared remarks. And this is one where I could recite this in my sleep. I remember the moment I first heard about Arrive Together as a pilot in Cumberland County 2 years ago. It's hard to believe at one level it's that far back, and at another level it feels like yesterday. And to be celebrating that this anniversary of 2 years, and now with the acknowledgement that Arrive Together exists in all 21 of our counties, is a big, big deal. I think if you were to ask me right now, we're 6 years in out of 8, God willing, what would be high on the list of lasting legacies? I think Arrive Together, not just in law enforcement or in our justice system, but across the whole spectrum of our energies during our time in office. I think Arrive Together would be a finalist for the most important lasting legacy. We don't do this by ourselves. It takes a village, including the aforementioned Matt and team and county prosecutors and local elected officials, but especially the appropriation and leadership that we've seen in the legislature. So I want to give in absentia Senate President Nick Scutari, Speaker Craig Coughlin, and all of their colleagues who have been so important to helping us stand this program up. I know Bill Spearman is here. I can't see him because of the lights, but Bill has been one of the advocates of Arrive Together from day one, and he's up from Camden this morning to be with us. But to all the legislators, to Matt and Lindsay and team, to Andrew Bruck, who came before, who was a big champion when he was in office, Sarah Edelman, our commissioner of the Department of Human Services, State Police Superintendent Colonel Pat Callahan. There's a long list of heroes associated with this. I believe the words that Arrive Together has redefined our justice system, period, are words that are absolute and stand with great evidence. And I think the beauty of Arrive Together is in its simplicity. The notion that you're going to transition from a uniformed member of law enforcement in a marked car to a plainclothes member in an unmarked car sitting alongside a mental health professional, and then assessing on the scene who goes in first, what is the order of business. At one level, it's so simple, and at another level, it is a landmark. It is changing literally the future and the reality and essence of the justice system. In a way that's different from other ways, it is an incredibly important program to deepen the trust between members in the law enforcement community and the communities they serve. So in a lot of the programs that we do, they're broad scale, they're light of day, they're not in a moment of crisis. Last week, for instance, I was with a bunch of our state troopers at St. Benedict's Prep in Newark with Father Edwin Leahy and this whole Building Bridges program that was celebrating an anniversary. Just incredible to witness that. Again, not a moment of crisis, to the contrary. Young high schoolers, boys and girls, overwhelmingly kids of color, with our troopers basically doing exercises, team building together, walking in the other, as they say, walking in the other guy's shoes. Something to behold. This is another huge weapon in that deepening of the relationship between law enforcement and the communities they serve, but in a very, very different way. It is clearly in a moment of crisis. It is very specific to an individual or a small number of individuals. And it's, at the end of the day, largely a word-of-mouth reality, or the absence of action reality that deepens the relationship between law enforcement and the community in a very different way. you all may have talked about this, Matt, but Brookings, which is one of the most renowned think tanks on the planet, did a complete soup-to-nuts study of Arrive Together and found that over 95% of the cases where Arrive Together was in use, over 95% resulted in no arrest and no use of force, which is an extraordinary accomplishment. This is now, not surprisingly, and with Brookings and other folks helping us, this is now a national model. This will have implications that go far beyond the reality in our 21 counties. And I think it also is a huge weapon, a positive weapon, in redefining the scope of the responsibilities of members of law enforcement. You had, prior to Arrive Together, you had members of law enforcement being required to be essentially mental health professionals, and that's just not fair. And so the notion of narrowing and making that scope much more in stark relief and much more focused on the reason that the men and women joined the ranks of law enforcement has been a huge boon in a very different way. And for all of the above, it doesn't come free, but it's shockingly inexpensive relative to the impact. And so it's one of those things, as I say, it's high, a finalist for finger number one of lasting legacies of our administration. Again, it will have legs for decades to come in this state, but I think it will change the reality in the face of the justice system across many, many American states. And lastly, which is kind of, I regularly check in with Matt or Paramel Garg, our great chief counsel, on hearing how it's going and hearing anecdotal evidence. And you hear some great stories that are coming out of this. One story, the person's cell phone was damaged, so they accompanied the person to get a new cell phone. Another one, somebody fixed their toilet. I mean, it's clearly addressing the crisis of the moment, but there are incredible human interest stories that come out of this as well. So I'm incredibly honored to be with you this morning. Matt, I thank you and your colleagues for everything you do, including inviting me to join you. I would just ask you to please keep up the great work. Stay safe. I wish you great holidays and an extraordinary 2024. Thank you.
I want to thank Governor Murphy again for joining us and for his kind words about Arrive. I know that both the Attorney General and the Governor have mentioned that Arrive is really a signature for both of their administrations, and I know that they feel that very truly and very deeply, so we're really privileged to have had him here today. So with that, we are ready for our next panel. So if our next panelists can start their way up to the stage while I introduce all of you. So for our next panel, we're going to talk to some Arrive team members. So we have Officer Matthew Garvey of the